apologize for the, excuse me, little pause at the beginning of all of these lectures, but Zoom has to tell me if it's recording or not. So I'm really excited because I found my chapter 5, or I should say 5th edition PowerPoints that I traditionally use in class and I really like using because they have lots of examples that I can work through with you. And there's an example here in chapter 10, which I was really wanting to find, and I finally found it, and so I'm really excited about that. Also, I may be uploading additional problems that I work out. I'll do some videos. If you would like to see something worked out that you have questions on, please email me and I will do a quick video, post that to my YouTube channel or here on Canvas as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start Objective 2. Now, Objective 2 takes a look at how the government internalizes externalities. I probably should have said Objective 3, but you get it. How does the government internalize externalities? And there's two basic ways. The first way the government can internalize an externality is through regulation, or what we call a command and control approach. The second way that the government can kind of curb, if you will, pollution or a negative externality, I'm going to use pollution in this example, is to use tradable pollution permits or TPPs. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. And I apologize for a little bit of the clunkiness here. This is my third take, and I'm hoping I get it right this time. Okay, so let's do this. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these two approaches. So the first approach that we have are command and control policies. This is where we many times make a law that this is how much pollution you can have, or you must reduce your pollution by a certain amount. Now, the reason that economists don't favor this approach as much is because it treats good polluters and bad polluters exactly the same. So that's kind of weird. What is a good polluter? A good polluter is an efficient. Maybe they are trying to do the right things. They are integrating the latest technology as soon as they get it to help a clean environment. They have some kind of a green initiative. And these folks will be treated just like those that ignore the environment. So this is why we say, I'm not so sure about that one. So that's a command and control policy. Economists usually prefer and kind of by and large really like this idea of market-based policies. And the market-based policies, essentially what the government does is they do kind of create a mandate, but they set up a market where you can actually buy and sell the right to pollute. It sounds a little strange, but let's go ahead and take a look at these two things. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that and advance to my next slide. Okay, so let's start with the command and control approach because I think most people can wrap their head around this one just a little bit easier because it's something perhaps that you've heard about. But the regulatory approach or command and control approach is a mandate, okay? So again, we have some agencies here in our country like the EPA, and again, they will dictate a maximum level of pollution. And sometimes setting a maximum level is perhaps not necessarily the best way to go because what you're saying is this is the maximum you can do. So is there any incentive to do less than that? And I would argue there's not a lot of incentive to do less than that. So when the government does this, and let me go back to sharing my screen with you. So when the government does this, what they use many times, as you saw in Objective 1, is they create corrective taxes or Pavlovian taxes. And I'm going to put up a YouTube video on Pavlovian taxes. I'm not going to do it because I don't do it justice, but a lot of people do. And so I'm going to go ahead and use use what's already out there. Why reinvent the wheel? If you're interested in learning more about Pavlovian taxes. But the idea here is to raise some revenue for the government, hopefully that they will use to fight climate change and ensuring a green environment and the health of our planet, although it doesn't always work that way. In fact, it's never earmarked specifically for that purpose. Okay, the second type of approach that the government can use to internalize an externality is a little bit more complicated, but this is the one that economists tend to favor. And so it's setting up a market where the market forces of demand and supply really do come to bear. And so we set up a market for tradable pollution permits. And it goes back to those principles of economics where we say people respond to incentives. Now, this might get a little confusing. You can always stop it, rewind it, take a look at it again, and I'll do my best to present this in a very clear manner for you. Okay, some of the advantages are listed here. And again, I think the biggest advantage to this is that it can, in fact, reduce pollution at a lower cost to society. And so that's the reason why we think this is good. And more so, the idea that we have a market and then that market becomes efficient. So there's an efficient final allocation. Those polluters that pollute the most are going to end up paying the most. So let's go ahead and erase these drawings, and I'm going to go ahead on to the next slide here. So again, we're going to internalize the externality here, and I'm going to use an example to clearly, I hope, clearly walk you through this stuff. Okay, so here we have an example, and we have Acme and US Electric. Okay, doop, doop, doop. Okay, and they each run coal-burning power plants. Each currently emits 40 tons of sulfur dioxide per month. Excuse me just one moment. Third take gets me a little thirsty. Okay, so for the industry as a whole, we have 80 tons per month. The goal of the government is to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions by 25% or 60 tons per month. So that's our goal. And the cost of reducing the emissions is 100 tons for Acme, 200 tons for US Electric. We could say that US Electric is perhaps the more inefficient polluter in this particular example, and the efficiency basically, we can tell that by the cost. So the first type of approach we're going to use by the government is this regulation, the command and control approach. So every firm must cut its emission by 25%. So what exactly would that look like? So let's start with Acme. Acme, whoop, boy, I'm telling you, will have to reduce its emissions by 10 tons. The problem tells us that it costs 100 tons, $100 per ton to reduce emissions, and they have to reduce 10 tons to get under the threshold of 30 tons. And so the cost, and I'm going to use this as a negative because it's a cost to the company, is $1,000. Okay, we're going to do the same thing then with US Electric. So for US Electric, they have to reduce, likewise, sulfur dioxide emission by 10 tons. So US Electric, we're going to reduce that by 10 tons. Because they are the least efficient polluter here, we're going to say it takes $200 per ton, and they have to reduce it by 10 tons, which equals $2,000. So the cost then to the industry is going to be the $1,000 from Acme plus the $2,000 from US Electric, which will equal $3,000 to the industry. And I should again express that as a negative because it is a cost to the industry. So $3,000 per ton. Okay. Okay, so here we go. 1,000 for Acme, 2,000 for US Electric. Total cost of achieving the goal is 3,000. So we have in fact reduced emissions by 25%. That was the command and control. But we've done it at a cost, and again, the cost to the industry as a whole of $3,000. Now again, that doesn't seem like much, but it might be jobs that we're talking about. So again, to put it into the context of the environmental in the relationship between businesses and households. Okay, now let's walk through tradable pollution permits. We still have Acme and US Electric. They're currently at 40 tons of sulfur dioxide per month. The goal is to reduce emissions by 25%. Or to get it to 60 tons per month total. So notice there's a little bit of a different approach here because what we're looking at is we're saying we're interested in the total for the industry. Okay, a little bit different focus here. Okay, so tradable pollution permits. How this works is that the government is going to give, that's right, give 30 permits to each firm. And then they will establish a market for these tradable pollution permits. Okay. So each firm can use its permits or it can sell any leftover permits. Now, because Acme is a more efficient polluter, if there's such a thing, Acme is going to use 20 permits and sell 10 to US Electric. And we're going to establish a market rate for these of $150 each. Oh, let me go back here and I want to erase my annotations. Okay, there we go. Okay, so remember in this particular example that the price for a tradable pollution permit is $150. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and compute the cost of achieving this goal. So Acme can only produce 30 tons per month. So what they're going to do is they're going to sell 10 permits to US Electric for $150. And so they get $1,500. And so if we were going to put this in some kind of fashion, we would say, hey, you just made money from selling those permits. So that is a positive $1,500. Okay? All right. Now, for they still, whoops, they're going to go ahead and use the 20 permits that they were given by the government, and they're going to emit 20 tons of sulfur dioxide per month. They're going to spend $2,000 on cleaning equipment to reduce their emissions. And when they do, remember they started with 40, now they're at 30, and from that 30, they're going to sell off 10. So here, let's see if I can do this right. So they are going to spend the $2,000 on equipment to be able to sell off the 10 permits. Okay. Okay. So We have the original $1,500 that they get from selling the permits, and then we also have the negative $2,000 that they have to spend on the cleaning equipment. So the overall cost to Acme is going to be a positive, because they earned money on selling those, $1,500 minus the $2,000 that they spent on the equipment. So therefore, they have spent $500 overall on this particular initiative. Okay. Okay. Now, let's take a look at US Electric. US Electric is going to buy the 10 permits from Acme. So again, kind of looking at this in terms of costs and so on. So that's going to be a negative $1,500 for them because they are buying those permits. They're then going to use the 10 permits that they purchased from Acme plus the original that they got free from the government. They're going to go ahead and emit 40 tons of pollution. Not going to spend any money on abatement. Why? So the net cost to US Electric is going to be $1,500. But over time, US Electric is going to say, that's kind of expensive. We have Acme over here who's doing exactly, they're meeting the mandate, but they're doing it at a cost of $500. So why wouldn't we buy the equipment and do that? So when we look at this, and again, looking at the overall cost to the industry, the cost of achieving this goal is a lot lower than the command and control approach. And so much so that it is $2,000 versus $3,000. So the command and control approach was actually more expensive to the industry, could be the loss of jobs, those kinds of ramifications, than this tradable pollution permit system. Okay, let me go ahead and erase these, and we'll advance on. Okay, so this graph takes a look kind of at the difference between a corrective tax versus tradable pollution permits. And again, when we take a look at this, we say the demand for pollution rights we have here in blue in both panel A and in panel B. In panel A, this is our command and control approach using a corrective tax. And in panel B, we set up a supply of tradable pollution permits. Now, you might be asking yourself, why do they look so different? Okay, well, this is kind of the reason why. So in panel A, this is a tax on everyone. So this is perfectly elastic. Okay, it's a tax on everyone who emits these pollution taxes. So this is why it sets the price of pollution right at where the corrective tax is at. On panel B, however, what happens is because the supply is restricted by the government and there are no substitutions for this, the limit on permits is perfectly inelastic. Okay, so you can kind of see the differences in those two examples there. Again, coming back to that idea of elasticity. Kind of seems like we can never get away with that. Whoops. Oh, going all over crazy here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear those drawings. Okay, and that's basically these next couple of slides show why we object to pollution and kind of putting costs on it and so on. You can all read, so I'm not going to read it to you. But we do know, based upon the 10 principles, that, everything is a trade-off. is a clean environment a normal good? It definitely is. And again, so we would say it has positive income elasticities when we look at it. Okay. Oh, this is a slide that should actually be on the next slide. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that one over and say, this is me and your author, Greg Mankiw. So shout out to Greg. Hope he's doing well. Don't you love the footwear? I'm in heels and he's in the tennis shoes. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here and basically say thank you for helping me and being patient while I walk through this one. It's a little bit longer than the rest. We're going to go ahead and pick up with Objective 3 next time. Thanks. Stay safe. Be well.